Boys and girls, what do watches and real estate have in common? You're going to love this and it's going to help you work out property a little bit easier. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about it.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Josh Wapshot, the economist. How are you this morning?
Good, Mr. Novak. How you going, leader of the people?
Pretty good. Tell me, what do you know?
Yeah, we got some interesting little points here to discuss between probably the three biggest states: Victoria, Queensland, and New South Wales. Just to shoot us off with some statistics. Median house prices across all three of those states. We got New South Wales 1.325 versus 1.124 in Queensland and 947 in Victoria. Nationally, Australian residential property is valued at somewhere about $12.77 trillion. So it's a very big kitty there. And then we are obviously just with growth wise, I've got a couple of numbers here: 5-year growth, 10-year growth. Standout's actually been Brisbane over this shorter time frame. So not over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but if we take a snapshot of the last 10 years, Brisbane's up 120%, 5-year growth 80%. Sydney up 57.5% over the last 10 years, up 17% over the last 5. Whereas we've got Melbourne down there at 34.7 over the last 10 years and 3.3 over the last 5. Now, obviously, you've got to take into account, the median house prices, because a smaller percentage on a higher median house price might be just as big as a jump on something that's smaller. It's quite alarming there down on Victoria, Melbourne there, obviously having the lightest median house price and also considerably less growth in those areas. But then we've delved a little bit deeper, Mark, and we've had a little look into the immigration over the last year as well, because obviously part of that demand comes with population and the need for housing, which generally tends to have an effect on the market, supply and demand. Actually saw Victoria come through with the biggest population increase. So this is most likely from overseas migration. We had about 100,000 here in New South Wales, 123,000 in Victoria, 97,000 in Queensland. And interstate migration, Queensland was the winner here. Sat at
I think this is interesting. Then when you live in the country, which way do you go?
Well, that's it. Yeah. Well, it seems like people are heading to Queensland. A positive 21,500 have migrated in the year of 25, whereas Victoria saw 777 people leave. New South Wales saw 24,328 leave. So maybe, there's people there looking for value up at sunny Queensland and cashing in on their Sydney property and making the move. But I think
only 1,000 odd people left Melbourne, so they're pretty much staying or a little bit of moving.
Yeah,
up in Queensland. That's a big number, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's obviously net migration versus people coming in, leaving. But yeah, there seems to be a big move towards the sunny state from people that are already residing in Australia. But Mark, obviously someone with yourself, 33 odd or plus years experience in the real estate game, you would have touched
50 years. Yes.
You would have had a few experiences with landlords that have, looked to invest outside of Sydney, and you probably would have heard back from them after they've experienced that. And that's probably where we're heading with this topic, Casio versus the Rolex, Sydney being that premier market. Are you able to share anything from your experience with landlords or yourself with, investments that go into state, then come back to Sydney?
Look, definitely. I always look at that sort of New York mentality, and Sydney's a little bit of a New Yorker where it's harder It's because it's expensive. Everyone works hard, grinds, and it's hard, and that's for sure. I remember when I started in real estate in the 90s, early 90s, the big thing was Gosford. And then it was like there's a place called Terrigal as well. And there was just this huge influx of people from Sydney and Northern Beaches in particular going there. Then there was this phase where it was like, oh shit, and then people were coming back, and then they'd buried them, they'd lost money. Then there was this phase sort of in the early 2000s, which was Melbourne, and Melbourne was cool. Melbourne was the most livable city in the universe. It was the place to be. Um, and then then there's, oh, I don't want to bag these places out, but it doesn't have that shine that it had back then. And then people, end up retracting, bringing their money back, leaving money on the table, coming back. You can hear that in those numbers today, which are the last 5 or 10 years of Melbourne, which you've spoken about. There's 200 grand in that switch. It's a lot of money. And then now, Olympics, Queensland, North, off they go. So I'm distinctly, almost every decade, I distinctly do see that there's like a rock and roller that's doing well.
And maybe that's that little snapshot that we're seeing in the last 10 years across Queensland. But I think it's quite, I think policy and people need to really understand state government's importance when it comes to your assets. And I think that's what hit the nail on the head down in Victoria. Some really bad policy. Obviously, the big shutdown, they had the most aggressive shutdown during COVID. If you look at, where they've invested their funds and how far they are underwater at the moment, with that recent change in government, there might be, I think the lady that stepped down there, the state governor there, that might be the change they need, because it looks like some really bad policy over the last sort of 4 or 5 years has really contributed to, what's happened down in the Melbourne market with all these property taxes, and you must live in it here. If it's a second property, there were some additional taxes for investors and things like that. So it really put, the downer on the Melbourne market there. So I think it just really shows the importance of, who you're electing as your representative in the governments there, and who's putting together that policy.
Yeah, absolutely. And make no mistake, expensive quality is often expensive. Quality is often expensive, and where I'm alluding to is, the Casio versus Rolex. They both tell the time. Let's be practical. A watch is built to tell the time. But the quality you do pay for, which also generates scarcity. And I do have to say that I have always found Sydney, when we're relating that back to Sydney, that, if you're going to put in a $25 million medical scanning machine, $100 million medical scanning machine, people are often going to put it into Sydney because of its infrastructure, because that's where the best doctors in the country generally may be. And that's where all roads sort of lead to, and it's expensive. So I think that whole scarcity, and when it comes to planning, I've always found Melbourne got very loose on their planning. Build, 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 build. And then that property market sort of tanked a little bit. I'm seeing the same in Queensland. They're very loose on their planning, build, 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 build. And then it erodes that property market. So I think, again, going back to watches, you can see based on scarcity, if there's like one of one, it's generally worth more, or one of 1,000 or something. There is this play that Rolex and these types of guys have on watches and scarcity, and Sydney also has that play. But please make no mistake, even to fundamental, I don't know what you call the not gorilla, but when you go back to the Neanderthal days, you know, climatically, Sydney is good, not too hot, not too cold. Where, flooding is less prone. Weather systems are better. Waterways are beautiful. It's a beautiful city. You know, the the hundreds of years of the development of a city are based on good pillars like what I've just spoken about. And it's not like they just woke up 200 years ago and said, oh, you know what, let's just go to. They actually looked at Sydney and thought, and the merits they based it on to be a great city are still there. So they're the things that I think make it that sort of Rolex a little bit more, and make it that little bit more edgy on super basic things.
Yeah, and even to reinforce that point, my experience in mortgage broking in the past with bank valuations and things like drawing out equity, banks are actually a lot more aggressive, call it, on New South Wales property than distinctly your Queensland, your Victorias. So investment wise, if you're going out and trying to leverage and pull equity in order to purchase your next one, well, that's another reason for New South Wales, because they tend to be a little bit more aggressive on that revaluation and that ability to pull the equity out of the property to whatever you're pulling it out to do. But that was also one thing. So, when the banks are allowing you to borrow a little bit more against the assets because they've got a little bit more confidence in the value.
We're not being tossers either. I'm not being a tosser saying, oh, Rolex, 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 Sydney, Sydney, Sydney. Like, look, I'm I like my Apple Watch. But you're right, Josh. For those reasons, for those fundamental reasons, you could be Mr. Pragmatic and say, hey, look, a Casio is all I need. 100%. You can live in a 2-bedroom house in the middle of Australia that's going to cost you $100,000 to buy, but there's all the frills that go around a house. Maybe 10,000 things that make up a good home, and medical, education, price of petrol. I don't know. There's thousands of things that people will look at for livability. And I just think, Sydney champions all of those, most of those. If you take price out and you look at all those 1,000 pillars, I think you'll find that, Sydney's, always been a bit a champion since the beginning.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome story, Mark. And, good little insight into those Gosfords and those little, markets that emerge and slowly disappear, like we've seen, unfortunately, for Melbourne. But hopefully the resurgence back there seems to be some population increasing down there. So who knows what happens? And they've just had that change in leader down there. So maybe some good things to come.
And short-term views are so sexy, and long-term views are so boring. So, when you hold these views, it's like yawn. And when you're talking about, let's go to Byron, it's really hot. It's, it's a spunky place at the moment. Right now, it's like, yep. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know, people don't really, but when you're investing your lifelong money into a place, like, I think you just got to look at these things, mate.
Definitely. Very important. Beautiful. Anything else you wanted to add on?
Have a beautiful day.
Yeah, you too. Have a beautiful day, everyone.
See you, everyone. See ya. Bye-bye.